When you look at creativity beyond schematization, you also got to look at multimodal communication. We know this more than ever because our abilities to communicate, as we see right now via Zoom and other technical means across the world, has increased. Teenagers from a very young age on communicate via Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok. So these multimodal packages are important. They always were important because face-to-face communication is also a multimodal package of another person's facial expression, of their gestures, of the ground that you have, and lots of things which gesture studies have pointed out. But just to illustrate, sort of with hopefully funny, but at the same time highly complicated example, what goes into this and how we should approach this, I'm going to show you a short clip. I'm not endorsing the product per se. It's just about the linguistic and visual combination.
Snickers. 兄弟，怎么样？来劲了。You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers, get some nuts.
Okay, as I said, all chocolate bars are good. Don't eat too much of them. But what I want to focus on here is that you just watched this. And I don't think at no point in time did you have problems understanding what was going on, nor did you stop. Because, I mean, there's weird stuff going on if you look at it from a computational perspective, right? If you did facial recognition, then what would happen? I hope I can get to the element. Then the computer would tell you that at this point, there's an actor called Rowan Atkins in the scene down with the other samurais. And then, after eating a chocolate bar, you know, there's a camera trick there, which gives you a different perspective. And there's a cut to the scene. You see a samurai who's fully competent. But I'm pretty sure that none of you went like, whoa, what's going on? Where's Mr. Bean disappeared to? What's the samurai doing now? The moment you saw the guy holding the Snickers bar, you assumed that it was the old Mr. Bean character. You processed this immediately. And from a cognitive perspective, cognitive blending, conceptual blending is what is happening here. We'll talk about this in a second. But I just want to focus also on the language. You're not you when you're hungry. If we just look at this truth semantically, right? You are not you. That doesn't compute. It's a meaningless sentence, or at least it should be to a computer. We're not computers. We don't work like that. We understand immediately what is the intention behind you're not you when you're hungry, that there's an abstract ideal of you being at your fittest, and when you're hungry, you're a bit tired and you're not as fast and not as fit, and that's why, you know, you're not the whole full fit self that you could be, okay, but you're always the same self. It's a complex thought. It's one that we as humans can entertain because we can blend these different mental spaces. Of course, mental spaces, and it's very important, is a tribute to Gilles Fauconnier, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, a great loss to the community, a brilliant linguist who gave us the notion of mental spaces, which are going to be highly important for everything that we build on. So you can see that these mental spaces are there, they pop up, and you're able to unify them. And as Fauconnier and Turner said, you blend them into one. From a construction grammar perspective, just to focus on this a bit more, of course, you're not you. The first time you said it, wasn't a construction. It wasn't stored in your mental grammar. But you and the X is Y construction and not construction. All of this was there. You put it together and you said you're not you. Where is all of this happening? As I will argue throughout, in the working memory. That's where constructions are combined, verbal as well as visual. And constructions are the long-term memories, the chunks and the schematas that you have in your entrenched mind. This looks simple at first. So you've got long-term memory information, you activate it, put it together, and you get the construct. But if you think about how fast the processing of all the information was that you had in the clip, in the ad, then you will understand that there's lots of information that we can package into a single meaning. And the verbal and the visual are clearly just one packet of this. You don't separate this and process it independently. It gives you one specific meaning, which of course is supposed to be buy the chocolate bar, or if you are more literally minded, you're not you when you're hungry. This can be achieved via conceptual blending. And because we need conceptual blending here, I would follow Mark Turner and others in arguing, well, if we need conceptual blending here, maybe conceptual blending is the way forward to put together constructions in the working memory all the time. So there is no other combinatory mechanism. The mind doesn't unify. It's not just purely constraint based and all of the other metaphors that you have. And it's not just combine, it's not just merge. That's the important bit. So every day we use lots of metaphors. So Messi is the Mozart of football, brevity is the soul of wit, LeBron James is the Meryl Streep of basketball, or Donald Trump is the Meryl Streep of having thin skin. And these, from a cognitive perspective, using conceptual blending, can be explained by two input spaces, and in blending we can have more of two, obviously. So one input space is Mozart, everything you know about him, the frame, 18th century composer, brilliant, genius, died very young. Maybe you've got knowledge about him because of the movie, the Schäfer movie, the Schäfer play and the movie based on Schäfer's play. And then you've got Messi, who's obviously one of the best footballers of all time. And that's one input space. And you compress this into Messi as a genius of football. And the interesting thing about this is, I mean, there's an analogy, there's two participants, two individuals, Mozart and Messi, in the two spaces, and you blend the football thing from Messi and the genius thing from Mozart, but you do not take, you're selective in your projection, as Turner and Fauconnier say, because you do not take anything like 18th century or music into the blend. You do, if Messi is the Mozart of football, you're not saying that Messi is a great musician. I wouldn't know, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but that's not what you're saying. So it's selective projection, and you get a new idea. That's the basic important point. So you can take old ideas and squeeze new ideas out of them and be creative. Now, as we will see, the X is the Y of Z by now is, of course, a constructional template. And you have many instances like that where people use it. But originally, for the first time, it must have drawn on this blending process. If we then just sort of scratch on the surface of you're not you when you're hungry, then of course there's the visual and there's the language. And in the visual, what you do is you get Mr. Bean and his clumsiness and everything you know about him, and you get a samurai, which is very competent, skillful, masterful, different eras and so on. And you're able to blend these. So from Mr. Bean at the start, when the samurai is still hungry, you take the clumsiness, he eats something, he's no longer hungry. Of course, you also project an ad frame where you know that they're trying to sell you the Snickers bar. But just linguistically, you can also see that there's a predicative B construction. You are you, X is Y. There's a biological urge frame to be hungry and a need frame that changes the state. Everything you know encyclopedically about being hungry and then eating something. You've got negation and you got the U input space. And that's blended into something. If you're hungry, you're not well, but if you eat, you will feel better, and you're not you when you're hungry means you're not your perfect self. So this involves many different input spaces, and the visual is going to come on top of that. And this is a highly creative aspect again, and I would argue that in the working memory, therefore, we combine the visual and the linguistic, and a lot of this is not going to have to do with a term I shall use later, multimodal constructions. So gesture, verb, verbal as packages that are stored with a specific meaning, but there's going to be visual information, gesture information, and language information, which creatively you package together using conceptual blending. Let's just look at gesture studies a bit in more detail to see what I'm getting at.